Hello everyone, Tactical here. The Chaos Dwarves have been in a rough spot of the meta for quite a while, so I figured I might as well try them out and see if I can figure out a meme army combo for them and add some flair to their playstyle. And here we are, fielding the Inferno Castellan. Definitely not a meta choice to the Chaos Dwarf faction here. Bringing in the Breath of Hatred ability, it imbues flaming attacks and sundered armor, but more importantly, that plus 24 melee attack buff to an area of units, helping them excel in melee combat and slaughter their foes. However, it is indeed a 2-time use only ability and you can't afford to keep spamming it, and you have to carefully pick your engagements before activating this ability and boost your melee units. But if you use it properly, it can definitely give you a great boost and help your units slaughter their foes. Other than the Inferno Castellan, we have Drazhoath the Ashen here, bringing in the Dark Renown plus 8 melee attack buff to surrounding units. It doesn't apply to himself, but still, plus 8 to any units that has contempt, including Chaos Dwarf Infantry and the Bull Center Renders. It can definitely help out in melee a lot. Drazhoath himself doesn't really need the plus 8 melee attack since he does have the Graven Scepter to bring in additional melee damage. In his spell kit, he is bringing Dark Subjugation, further synergizing with the melee attack buff and making enemies more vulnerable to melee attacks. And on top of that, Ash Storm that imbues fire weakness, which synergizes with Breath of Hatred, which imbues that flaming attack. For the regular units here, we are bringing in units of Contempt that can benefit from the Dark Renown ability. Blazing Beards of Bazarak and Inferno Iron Swan. Inferno Iron Swan, one of the best infantry in the game and probably the best unit on the entire Chaos Dwarf roster. They can soften up enemy front lines with their explosive charges while grind out enemy with their impressive melee stats. Blazing Beards even have that frenzy to further boost their melee attack. The Goblin Laborers will be surrounding the backline here, which are further guarded by the Bull Center Renders. These are just the regular ones with shields, giving them a bit more melee defense to survive in melee combat, as they are already enjoying that melee attack buff from Dark Renown, partially making up for their lack of anti-large compared to their Great Weapon variant, while adding a bit more survivability. There are also a couple Kadai Fireborn, being a solid monstrous infantry and great melee presence that can benefit from the Breath of Hatred. That's basically it for the Chaos Dwarf army build, and now let's go on to the other side of the battlefield where Skarbrand the player is fielding the forces of his beloved Blood God. Khorne going for a front line of Marauders and some Crushers spam, Skull and Blood Crushers both. 5 Hove Crushers unit in total, 2 Skull Crushers and 1 Blood Crusher on this side, 1 Skull Crusher and 1 Blood Crusher on the other side, all of them the regular ones, no Regiment of Renown, which I'm quite surprised. Leading the army at Chaos Lord of Khorne with Fight or Die with that plus 24 melee attack buff, stacking on top of the Blood Shrine of Khorne that can provide an additional plus 8 melee attack to surrounding units. Looks like this is a battle of attack buffs, and let's see which side has the superior attack buff combo, the Chaos Dwarfs or Khorne. The battle begins and 2 melee attack buff stacking armies are charging towards each other. My Goblin Laborers are holding at the back there, forming some sort of rear guard. Not a solid one by any means, since they are pretty much a crappy chaff infantry, but they are still bodies that can slow down enemy charges, absorb the charge impact, allowing my Kadai Fireborn and the Bull Center Renders to countercharge and hack away at the slowed down enemy cavalry. On the far side there, a little bit of a minor breath attack there. Not doing the most damage to the Marauders of Khorne, so I probably should have saved it for a better opportunity and burned down a bigger blob of enemies. But still, damage is damage, while on the other side, my opponent circling around with the Skull Crushers and Blood Crushers ready for that rear charge, though the infantry Marauder front line is getting obliterated by those explosives of the Inferno Iron Swan and Blazing Beards. Cinderbreath is charging in, dropping the terror and fear onto the Marauder front line, probably is gonna just terror rout them soon. These Marauders are being terror routed already, though the Blood Crushers and Skull Crushers are charging in. Goblin Laborers are in the position and did absorb a lot of that charge impact, though my Kadai Fireborn will start taking damage as soon as they come into contact with the anti-large armor piercing of the Skull Crushers. Thankfully, my frontline managed to break the Khorne armies, and as a result, the Inferno Iron Swan and Cinderbreath can return to the backline to help out. Though on the right flank, the Kadai Firebomb will probably get overwhelmed by the Blood and Skull Crusher combo there, being left alone against all these armor-piercing elite cavalry. Back to the left flank, the Crushers have managed to retreat, setting up for a second charge like this one here, going after some slightly more exposed Kadai Firebomb, making direct contact with their anti-large armor piercing. You can see they're already making a dent on the Kadai Fireborn's HP, and theoretically this is a good engagement for the Skull Crushers. But here comes the Bull Centuranders saturating in and buffed up by Breath of Hatred, plus 24 melee attack. All thanks to that AoE attack buff. Even the Goblin Laborers are getting a 24 attack buff and up to 36 melee attack and armor sundering, doing a lot more damage to these Skull Crushers. You can see the Skull Crushers getting absolutely obliterated by all forces within the vicinity. On top of that, Drazhoath the Ashen should be able to drop that plus 8 melee attack to these Bull Centuranders, up to 65 melee attack. Man, that is a lot of damage. On top of that, we do have an Ash Storm, adding weakness to fire to these Skull Crushers, making them even more susceptible to the Bull Centuranders, who now has fire damage thanks to the Breath of Hatred. And of course, the Kadai Fireborn being fire elemental constructs, they do have fire attacks anyways, so a 20% damage boost against these Skull Crushers of Khorne. All those buffs and debuffs combined absolutely deleting this poor Skull Crusher in a matter of seconds. Now, Drazhoath is free to reinforce other fights, like here, munching through those Marauders, and should be able to help these Infernal Ironsworn beat up them pretty hard. While over here on the other side, one of my Kadai Fireborn is fading away from reality since they got overwhelmed by the Blood Crushers and Skull Crushers, plus the Blood Shrine coming over here to imbue the melee attack buff to the surrounding troops. But of course, my Kadai Fireborn here and the Bull Centuranders are freed up to pick other fights, like going after these Skull Crushers, who are slightly more isolated, being debuffed by the Dark Subjugation. Now, the Bull Centuranders, despite not having that anti-large, that plus 8 melee attack still puts them in 41 melee attack. While at the same time, the Skull Crushers got their melee defense debuffed to a meager 19. Now, the Bull Centuranders have way more attack than necessary to bring down these Skull Crushers in the melee fight, so the Skull Crushers are going down, and they're going down fast. Infernal Castellan holding in melee, since he does have some anti-large armor-piercing weapon strength. The Blood Shrine of Khorne is still trying to hold it out with the melee attack and leadership buffs to nearby troops. But yeah, 2 units of Crushers dealt with. Now we still have 3 more to go, though 2 of them is already quite tattered. Another breath attack from Drazhoath, burning down some Skull Crushers. Not a lot of damage, actually. They're better being targeted at enemy infantry blobs. Still, one of the Blood Crushers are down to the last bit of their HP, and we are saturating even more of our armor-piercing monstrosities in. Now, an Ash Storm, dropping the flaming weakness to all these Khorne units, and another Dark Subjugation, nuking that melee defense of these Blood Crushers, allowing those Bull Centuranders to do a lot more damage in the process. Let's see how much value they got. 2 chevrons already, 1,500 gold worth of damage value, definitely some very solid damage, and still having quite a bit of fight left in them. The Kadai Fireborn also put up some very strong melee performance, though they are unfortunately fading away, just like the first unit of Kadai Fireborn on the right flank. The Blood Crushers are extremely depleted, barely holding on in the fight with Fight or Die boosting their leadership, but soon they'll start their demonic instability crumble as well, leaving only a half-health Skull Crushers in the fight. My Bull Centuranders are still alive, partially thanks to the additional melee defense of their shield, making them slightly more durable in melee. Not a lot of kills, getting over 1,700 gold worth of damage value. They have earned back their cost and then some more. Now they are surrounding the Skull Crushers with the help of some Infernal Ironsworn. Drazhoath diving in with Cinder Breath, another Breath of Hatred boosting that melee attack in all the Chaos Dwarf units, crushing the Skull Crushers and securing victory for the Chaos Dwarfs. Now let's talk about the army build itself. It is a build with very strong focus on the melee power. The idea is to soften up enemy front lines with explosives and then drop the Castellan's AoE attack buff into key engagements, allowing the Chaos Dwarfs to win them with superior melee attack. Combining the plus 24 melee attack of the Breath of Hatred and the plus 8 melee attack of Drazhoath's Dark Renown, that is a 32 melee attack boost to units with Contempt. For example, for the Infernal Ironsworn, Blazing Beards, and Bull Centuranders. The Breath of Hatred also imbues flaming attacks, so synergizes quite well with the fire weakness of Ash Storm. If used properly, this combination of buffs and debuffs should give the Chaos Dwarfs a strong edge in any melee brawls. While the attack buffs are not active, Drazhoath can still fly around on Cinder Breath and support his army with his powerful toolkit. The combination of the melee attack buff of Dark Renown and the melee defense debuff with Dark Subjugation can boost the damage of any units with Contempt. Even without their great weapons anti-large, regular Bull Centuranders can quickly take down the Khorne's Bloody Fist in melee combat with this buff and debuff combo. Drazhoath himself on Cinder Breath is also an extremely powerful entity. burning down blobs of infantry with his breath attacks, or dish out ridiculous damage against elite single entities with Graven's Scepter boosting his attack stats. But of course, you don't have to bring Drazhoath on Cinder Breath. Just take him on foot if you just want those attack buffs and debuffs, such as in this battle against Slaanesh, where Drazhoath is mostly a buff bot, giving his infantry that +8 attack, counteracting the melee attack debuffs from the Slaanesh units. Now, as much as I would like to say this build is perfect and does not have any weakness, it is indeed not the case. It leans very heavily into an elite melee build, ending up with a rather narrow army, or in other words, blobbed up. That means it is very vulnerable to armies with anti-blob attack like those with strong anti-infantry artillery, or anti-blob spells like Flock of Doom. It also struggles into specific anti-armor infantry builds that the Ironsworns and Fireborns would have a rough time trading against. Again, the build relies heavily in melee, and if the melee doesn't work, well, it will be an uphill battle. You do have to pick your matchups if you want to deploy this Chaos Dwarf attack buff stacking build, and so far, it has seen the most success against Khorne and Slaanesh. Now let's wrap up this army build video in the post-battle screen. In the initial battle showcase, it was basically carried by the Bull Center Renders and the Kadai Fireborn, supported by the Infernal Castellan and Drazhoath the Ashen there, getting some spectacular damage value and earning 2 chevrons on both, getting some solid damage done against the enemy Elite Crusher Cavalry. The infantry did a great job holding out against the enemy Marauders and then providing that meat shield support and grind down the enemy cavalry alongside the Bull Center Renders and Kadai Fireborn. The Chaff did their job, slowed down the enemy rear charge and protected the backs of all these elite infantry. Drazhoath didn't do that much damage, but his buffs and debuffs were crucial in aiding the fights for the Bull Center Renders and the Kadai Fireborn there. This Kadai Fireborn, though, unfortunately being overwhelmed by Blood Crusher and Skull Crusher without any support from the characters, and got killed pretty early. As for the other side of the battlefield, the Khorne army here, unfortunately, the Skull Crushers and the Blood Crushers, under so many buffs and debuffs from my Chaos Dwarf build, they were not actually able to trade well, even against the monstrous constructs. The Skull Crushers, their anti-lodge and armor piercing are just not enough, despite normally those would be their ideal targets. The rest of the army also didn't do that good against my super elite melee build. And yeah, that's it for today's battle and the army build showcase. Overall, this is a pretty fun Chaos Dwarf build that slightly deviates from the usual double flying cows armies where you just pick 2 characters, instead putting the emphasis on enhanced elite melee units and not the single entity monsters. It might not change the balance of the meta, but it can still be quite lethal if you use your buffs and debuffs adequately. Just another idea to play the Chaos Dwarf faction, though I do hope CA will bring some buffs to them soon, cause these Dawi with heads really need it. Anyways, that's all for today, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich signing out.